Sewing tips for doing collars on doll shirts. I'm not a sewing expert, but I've watched a lot of tutorials, and a lot of people seem to struggle with interpreting the collar patterns on doll shirts. So these are just a couple of the tricks that I've learned that I'm sharing with you. There are two kinds of doll pattern collars that you usually see. One is this one, which has the seam allowance built into it, and this is the one that I'm doing a video for, which is the one that does not. They want you to sew the shape of the collar into the fabric before you actually trim everything down to size. Make sure to snip that extra diagonal fabric off the points of your lapel seam, because that extra fabric will make it harder to get a nice point on your lapel. One thing I do that isn't on the patterns is to leave extra seam allowance on the bottom of the collar so I can hem it in to avoid a raw hem on the collar fabric. There's probably a better way of doing this, but this is how I do it. This is the tricky part, reverse folding the flap that makes the placket on the shirt. The placket is where the buttons go. By folding this flap over the collar, you get a nice clean looking shirt opening. For comparison, here's a jacket I sewed the collar on top of the placket. The back side of your collar will touch the outside of the back of the shirt, and then you fold the flap over the collar in reverse, and then you can turn it inside out when it's all sewn, and that's how you get a clean line. Even if your pattern does not have the extra allowance for folding over the collar, you can just sew an extra panel onto each side and fold it over, and that's what I did here. That previous shirt I did 2 pieces, but this shirt collar I'm doing with 1 piece folded over because it's just a solid print. And again, you just sew the shape of the collar, and then I'm going to trim it down and cut it out, and I'm leaving that extra seam allowance to fold in. Always iron your collars. Also, you're going to flip this inside out after ironing, and it also gets rid of the transfer pen. Iron again after turning inside out, and then I also use the tip of my little iron to push out the inside of the lapel corner. And again, that flipped over wrong side inside fabric, which I should have added to, but whatever, it's working. And just make sure you iron everything again once it's all done.